SpotlightOnPodcast.com/store is the place to go to get a Spotlight On collectible for the music and arts lover in your life, or maybe even yourself. Go to SpotlightOnPodcast.com/store today. Hello and welcome to Spotlight On, a production of 23 Media Ventures. I'm your host, Lawrence Purrier. Today, the spotlight shines on pianist and composer Satoko Fujii, an incredibly unique and prolific artist. Satoko works at the intersection of jazz, contemporary classical, rock, and traditional Japanese music, composing for ensembles of many sizes and configurations, though she's especially adept with the jazz orchestra format. For all of her efforts, Satoko is widely decorated as an improviser, composer, arranger, and band leader. Satoko has released over 100 albums as a leader or co-leader. At a clip of several each year, music seems to tumble out of her. The discussion you're about to hear was recorded back in late March of this year. Satoko was a thoughtful and generous conversationalist and provided insight into her creative and production processes, her evolution as an artist, and shared a bit about the unique challenge of making the life as an artist in Japan. Enjoy. Thank you so much for making time to do this. I very much appreciate it.
Well, thank you so much for your interest to interview me. Yeah.
I have spent quite a bit of time over the last few days with both Jet Black and Unwritten.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like I'm immersed in the world of your music. It's such a distinct palette. As I was reflecting on how it was landing for me, there's the power of the music itself. There's also something very powerful in the production, the way you record, and everything's so distinct, yet mixed so well. It seems to be part of a larger aesthetic. How do you approach the engineering and sort of that technical part of your music making? It seems to be so important.
Your words make my engineer be very happy at first. Yeah, it's just amazing because they are both recorded in concerts, not in the recording studio. So that means I didn't spend so much money. But there are several things with being a recording studio, good and bad, of course. And in front of audience, we can keep our energy up. We know that we cannot have another take. That's it. We can get high energy as well as concentration. That's a good thing with live recording. But of course, technically, it is very difficult because we are not in isolated room. So all sounds leak. It's difficult. If I make mistake, that affect other bandmates. But I'm lucky because they know how to fix it. If I make a mistake, they know how to fix it, how to make it right in the context. It's one of the secrets that makes the thing good. And the technology, now we just need computer and audio interface and some mics as a concert venue and a good engineer, of course. The Jet Black is recorded by professional sound engineer, but Unwritten is recorded by Peter Owens, who is a drummer in the band.
Wow.
He knows the music and he has so much experience and we trust him. So everything went very well. But at last, I always get Mike Marciano, who is a sound engineer with a lot of success. He's in New York City. And I made many CDs. And he used to work for Systems 2, the studio in New York City. Now he's more like freelance. He's just like magician. Sometimes I'm not sure it's the good quality to make CD or not. I just send the sound file to him. and he makes everything, sometimes completely different. Sometimes I feel like, wow, this sounds like we played in beautiful big music hall, but that's just underground, very small venue, not good piano.
It's amazing. Isn't that amazing? Yeah, it's such a gift and a skill.
Yeah.
When I started the conversation by saying I felt as though I was immersed in your music, the other side of that is I would have to spend months to become fully immersed in the catalog. It seems like it's hard not to acknowledge that with you about the volume and the prolific nature of your work. What is your experience with your work? Because as a listener and as an observer, there could be an interpretation where it's almost an obsession to create. Is it a burden for you? Is it a joy for you? Like, how do you end up creating so much?
I mean, I actually feel bad because I like doing that. Sometimes I get complained by many of my fans that they cannot follow. Yeah, but I just cannot stop because I love doing that. I don't feel like I'm working too much.
Mm-hmm.
I just follow my dream. Sometimes I just would like to do something. Okay, just do it. That's it. No secret. I think I have a big appetite.
How conceptual is your work? Do you embark on a project knowing that you're writing a songbook for a specific ensemble? Or are you creating and then in retrospect, you say, okay, I'm going to use this for the trio and this for a larger ensemble? How do you approach a project?
Well, that's depend. Sometimes I have some project coming up and I would like to add one more piece. In that case, I make some piece for that project. But other times, because I compose everyday basis, the first thing, if write on piano, I do compose. So in that case, I just compose. Sometimes I get inspiration that this is going to be a great piece for piano solo or great piece for orchestra or whatever. But many times I just pick notes. I just compose. So I have a book I called Diary because I do compose every day. Then when I need some piece for some project, sometimes I just read it again, read them over again. And I play it and I get some inspiration. Okay, this is going to be good for this project or another project. Yeah. So it's really depend. Yeah.
As an artist who creates so much and a composer who composes so much, do you repeat yourself and how do you avoid repeating yourself? Do you have a facility with your entire catalog? Because you make so much different music. Like how do you keep it all?
You know what? I really am glad that you didn't notice because my composition actually sounded sometimes very similar. Once I hear like way shorter composition, I would know, okay, this might be way shorter. So everybody has certain way to approach like intervals or rhythm.
Favorite combinations or yeah.
I think I do have that kind of stuff. There is an interesting story. Yesterday, actually, my husband, Natsuke, was practicing trumpet in other room. And I was in front of piano. So I didn't hear what he was practicing. And I was composing. I made some line composing, some notes, like melody. And I went out from the piano room and I hear my husband is playing. I composed right before. How he knows?
That's beautiful.
No, that was my another piece.
So what I was thinking, you had some kind of bond across space and time.
No.
And it was just something you had previously.
Of course, not exactly same, but I can tell one. How come he knows this line? But I sometimes repeat same lyrics. We cannot avoid it. We people have that tendency. That's probably not bad thing. So people can tell, this is his piece or her piece.
It almost creates a thread through time as well. Like, I don't think of it as a bad thing at all. It ties a canon together in a way.
Miles Davis, I think his play is pretty much same. Even he changed with electric instrument, or like before then, like 50s, he played with acoustic instrument. Then he changed to another instrumentation. But if we hear what he was playing, that's pretty much similar, I think, but sounded so different because in different context and a different group. That's actually not bad thing. I would like to think like that.
Something I'm curious about in your background is your classical training and education for so much of your early life. When I speak with other improvising or creative music artists, they often talk about the difficulty of transitioning, either because they had teachers who did not want them to improvise, or they had just never developed those skills. And I wonder, what was the transition like for you?
It was very difficult. Some people can get very easily from classical to more like improvisation. Because I remember when I was very little, before I got classical training, I improvised with piano. In front of piano, I was like 3 or 4 years old, and I was just playing. I just hit the keyboard, and I enjoyed. Sometimes I got like some illusion, like playing piano, and I got some movie film in my brain. I had a great time doing that. Then I started studying classical music, classical piano. I needed to read music. Of course, for kids, it's not fun. It's difficult.
Yeah.
We have to be very patient. Then I was teenager because one of my classical piano teacher loved jazz. So I was so curious what jazz is like. And I started listening to it from FM radio. But I never liked jazz until I listened to John Coltrane. Yeah, I love Supreme. I was so shocked because the music that I heard, I didn't understand anything. That was just like noise, so much dance. But I was moved with something. I was very curious and I started trying improvise with piano. And I didn't notice I couldn't play anything if I didn't have music score in front of me. I was so shocked because I felt like I'm like a well-trained dog that can do anything if they are told, but that cannot do anything if they are not told.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I was so sad. I actually quit classical piano right away. And I tried, but no success. With piano, I just needed something in front of me. So I decided maybe just leaving piano. So I did, and I actually collected some people who were interested in like improvising with their voice and just, hitting somewhere. So it's crazy stuff, improvising music without musical instrument. I just wanted to see what I can do with it. And I got all crazy people.
Hippies.
Yes. And every weekend at the park, we just real spontaneous improvising with voice. That was crazy stuff. People like family in the park walk away. Yeah, of course. Yeah, but that was so much fun. But once I did that, I went back to piano, but no success. I was away from piano for, I think, more than 2 years doing that kind of stuff. Still, I loved jazz. So I listened to jazz radio back then, vinyls. And also I went to jazz club in Tokyo often. And I found my favorite jazz piano player, Fumio Itabashi. He used to play like Elvin Jones band. I asked him if I can study with him. And I started taking his lesson. And he also switched from classical music to jazz. But he didn't have any hard time for transition. So he didn't understand why I couldn't play. Because I have some skill, because of classical piano training, but I don't know what I can do. He just said, just play, that's it. But that didn't work. And because of classical piano training, I could read music, and I started playing professionally in some cabaret in Tokyo because I could read music. Everybody said to me, you would be great. Just stay there for 1 year because we played every night. Everybody could improve. So don't worry, just stay there. But that didn't happen to me.
Wow.
Yeah, I was still very bad. I think I was the worst professional piano player in Tokyo back then.
I don't believe you.
Yeah,
No.
I have confidence. But anyway, then I decided to go to the States to study in Berkeley because I thought maybe that's a good idea to study in the school for my case. So I did, and I practiced in the school every day, spending like 2.5 years. Finally, I could play like jazz, some improvisation or ad-lib with chord progression. Finally, I could get it, but not the end. This is not the end. Then I moved back to Japan and I started having professional career. I just lost my goal. I couldn't remember why I wanted to play jazz, why I wanted to play piano, why I wanted to make music. I wanted to see what I wanted to do or what I want to do. Again, I would move to the States to study at NEC, New England Conservatory. And I met Paul Bley and all great teachers, Joe Maneri, George Russell, even like Jimmy Jeffrey, it's there. And finally, I noticed in narrow meaning, it's not my music. I have something else inside. That may be jazz, but that may be not jazz. I realized I have something, not just playing like Herbie Hancock or playing like Wynton Kelly. I finally raised myself.
We'll be back with more Spotlight On right after this break. Did you know that Spotlight On is completely self-funded by the team that produces it? We're looking for ways to keep the podcast self-sufficient without sacrificing the listener experience or the integrity of the show. The best way we could think of was to ask for the support of our listeners. Please consider making a donation to help cover our annual operating expenses. Go to spotlightonpodcast.com and click the word donate. If you can, please do, and if you cannot, please continue to enjoy the show. We're happy to have you as a listener. Thanks. And now, back to Spotlight On. Are there piano players outside of jazz that influence you more, or do different genres influence you in different ways? I ask you that question because in reading about you and reading interviews with you, it seems like you've had a bit of an evolution around accepting the term jazz for what you do. And listening to your music, I understand that. I know no one really likes to talk about genre as a creative person, but I hear you in a context of modern classical or experimental. I hear jazz. I understand why people would take the record and put it in the jazz section, but I hear it as bigger than that.
It's maybe better if I can explain what my music is. I have so much experience. I play jazz. I inherit jazz spirit, not style. Jazz changed all the time from the beginning. For me, jazz is not the music that we can see in the museum. If we see it in the museum, I wouldn't call it jazz. Jazz is alive. I think still alive. Jazz can eat anything. Jazz can bite anything. And jazz can change its style. But jazz is more like spirit. We just create something, not playing in the style. I think I'm a straight ahead or mainstream jazz musician. I played in Vancouver Jazz Festival. I said my music doesn't sound like traditional jazz, but I inherit jazz spirit, I believe. And in that case, I'm a mainstream jazz musician. And all audience started laughing. So I probably might sound funny.
No, that resonates for me. That makes sense.
Thank you. Especially when I moved back to Japan at some jazz club, many jazz fans, not just one, came to me and said, your music is not jazz. They actually were complaining, especially back then in Tokyo. People who love jazz is more like jazz in 50s or 60s.
Yeah.
Bebop or post-bebop, hard bop. My music didn't sound like jazz for them. I have quite bad experience with that kind of stuff. Yeah. But I just follow what I want to play. And of course, I got all influence from classical music or even pop music or Japanese music, jazz, everything I heard came in my brain and I mixed in my brain somehow.
It's very interesting because there's a few things there I'd like to talk about. One is the idea of what the audience wants versus what the music is, because I agree with you. In the lineage of jazz and in the spirit of jazz, there's nothing abnormal about what you're doing. It fits in the it's just moving the form along. And that's what you would hope musicians do. And then, like you said, there's a segment of the audience, and even down to the venue, you know, a certain venue is identified with a certain style or genre or era or collection of musicians. It used to be more like that in New York. My perception now in New York is that it's actually opened up a lot. Like I think of a club like the Blue Note. The Blue Note used to be very much like what you're talking about. You knew you were going to get a more traditional range of music. Now I look at the programming there and it's very exciting. They're bringing in hip hop artists and more vocals. And, you know, it's just very exciting to see the music, like you said, eat up more of what's around it.
Yeah, yeah.
But the other piece of that is I always perceived the Japanese audience, and I know it's a bad generalization, but so many of the artists here in America that were making the new music, the creative music, seem to have much more of a receptive audience in Japan. I think about John Zorn and his colleagues, how they could go to Japan and be much bigger in the way the early jazz artists were in Europe. They had to leave America and go to Europe. So it kind of surprises me to hear that there's that sort of traditionalist strand there.
Yeah, I would say there are people who love that kind of creative music. There are many fans of John Zorn's, but they are totally different from a jazz audience. People who love traditional jazz hate that kind of music.
Here too, yeah.
Yeah. I think, that's kind of world common. And the big thing in Japan is because just like in America, government doesn't support culture.
I wanted to ask you about that. It's not like a lot of Western European countries. There's not that same infrastructure for grants and government support.
Like Europe or Canada, they support culture a lot. Like cities or government or whatever.
Yeah.
They have some kind of system that they pay for that. In Japan, I think basic idea is they cannot just give money to music. In that case, they need to give money to some other things, not just culture. They are afraid to be complained. That was obvious when pandemic happened. We musicians got so bad because no concerts. Germany was great that they decided to support musicians very quickly. And all other government, because they are looking at Europe, what they are doing. Well, Japan, our government likes American government very much. I think we are just following American government. If America decide something, maybe 6 months later, we do same thing. But in America, there are many private grant, like MacArthur or Pulitzer. But in Japan, almost nothing. So unfortunately, we musicians are not supported by anything in Japan.
Wow.
But that was different in 60s, I think 50s and 60s. I don't know who paid for that. Maybe we were so hungry with music, jazz, after the Second World War. So people spent so much money on it. Musicians, when, especially like American musicians toured in Japan, they could make a lot of money and the condition was very good. Still, some of them have that kind of same image. I get emails almost every day asking, so I would like to tour Japan. I have to say, so sorry, you will not get paid. you have to play with door money, ticket sales.
Yeah.
And getting audience is most difficult thing. Clubs cannot pay for the accommodation because they are not supported by anybody. Actually, the situation in Japan is very bad. In that case, still we have a lot of musicians, very good musicians. They still want to play music. And I think that's actually, again, good and bad. For us, the situation is not good, but because of that, we need to have strong reason to play music because we cannot make any money. Still, we would like to make music. Means only good music can survive.
People with commitment.
Yes.
I know you've had periods of time when you lived in Europe and you studied in America and lived in New York for a while. Was it ever a consideration to just leave and to go somewhere else and try to build your career outside of Japan? Or was it very important to you to be in Japan?
What was it? 13 years ago, my husband and I moved to Berlin because we wanted to see what's the life there. But many things like tax or pension, that kind of stuff, it's not so easy to deal. If we were young, probably we could do that. But I'm 65 years old and my husband is 72 years old. It's difficult to switch everything to Europe from Japan. We already have tax payment history in Japan. We decided to move back to Japan. Also, nowadays, being in America or Japan or wherever don't make big difference. Address doesn't mean anything now.
Yeah.
And we just don't want to be somewhere not peaceful. But otherwise, I think we can be any place.
Our connection is a good example of that. We're able to have this conversation and we're in very different time zones and locations. And it's
Right.
To ask you a little bit more about composition, you described something that Chick Corea said to you about practicing composition. When I read that, it seemed so obvious, but not something I had ever thought before. In so much as I thought of it at all, you always imagine the composition as not something that you can just throw away. Once you start it, you have to do it. And the idea that you could practice composing, again, makes perfect sense, but I never thought about it. What did that free up for you?
Well, for me, just doing every day means practice.
Mm-hmm.
As I told you, I have like music book called for myself, diary. I have many written stuff in there everyday basis. I don't write so much. I don't spend so much time, maybe 15 minutes to 20 minutes every day. So sometimes I can write 8 bars. Sometimes I only can write like 4 notes. Where I need some piece, I look at the book and found some good piece that fit to that project. Especially these 5 years, I use everything from that book. It's not practice. It's actually composition. But, practice is like doing every day, not just wasting, not just, writing and throw it away. I actually use it. Yeah.
Given the variety of ensembles that you compose for and that you perform with, do you have a preferred format or is there a preferred palette that you specifically like to compose for? I know you do work with larger ensembles, but also trio, what we're here to talk
Mhm.
about now. Do you think about preference or is it just the composition tells you that it needs a certain arrangement?
For me, instrumentation is not so important. It's more like who I can play with. It's more like, I ended up having piano based drums, traditional piano trio, but I wanted to play that bass player, Takashi Sugawa, and I wanted to play with Itetsu Takemura, and they play bass and drums. So I ended up like having traditional piano trio. But that doesn't mean I wanted to have this certain format for my music. When people get together, more than two people, I think we already make society. We are a social animal. People are social animal. It's bee or ant. We sense what I can do in that group. For example, my husband has very good sense of direction. I'm not good at his. So when we go someplace, I just follow him. He knows his role. I don't like driving car, and my husband loves driving car. So he does drives car all the time. I just sleep in the car. So everything is like that. I like cleaning the room, so I do that. He doesn't like. He likes washing dishes, so he does that. We find what people always decide in the group, what I can do in this group. Same thing in band. Itetsu, the drummer, is a trio. He plays very sharp, very tight. Then I would like to put some other feeling. I put myself even more lyrical because of we try to make balance and make the society alive. When I pick people, I try to imagine some kind of society, some kind of group, how we can alive each other, how we can make ourselves even sound better.
Do you have these kinds of conversations with the artists, or is this more of an intuitive feel or something that gets worked out as you play? Like, how much of this is intention that you've all talked about?
Actually, I learned this thing from my experience. I didn't think like that at first. And a long time ago, I had a trio with Mark Dresser and Jim Black. Back then, Mark and Jim never played together before my trio. All my friends in New York City were kind of surprised how I got them in the same band. I just wanted to see, and I know that they're going to sound great. I learned something. We behave differently in certain group, and that was my study. But I don't explain this kind of stuff to people, to musicians where I get banned. I just sense it. I cannot explain exactly because I just sense it.
on an album like Jet Black, where you have actual compositions as opposed to unwritten, what is the composition that you're bringing to the band? My understanding from reading about you is that you don't come in with like full charts for everybody with everybody's parts written out, right? So are you bringing just head charts? Are you bringing thematic melodies? What have you composed for the trio?
This again depends. With this trio, because I now know they are great improviser, I don't want to bring much written parts. But still, I want to have some direction. I try not to write too much. I try not to direct too much because I would like to get some spontaneous musical expression from them to make my music even more interesting.
Does the piano still hold any mystery for you? Are you still learning?
Of course.
Yeah.
I'm still learning. Yeah, but I'm much, much more comfortable playing piano. Yeah, I don't know why, but I'm the person who takes long time for everything, not just piano. I'm not good at getting everything very quickly. I need just time. Then I can spend time. I can learn more somehow. But with some reason, after playing piano more than 60 years now, I finally started to feel very comfortable. But I probably need another 60 years.
You know what's funny about that, though? In something I read with you, you quoted a teacher who told you that maybe by the time you were around 70, you'd be pretty good. So you're right on track.
Yeah, exactly. He was right. Yeah.
Well, I think anybody that could make 100 or more albums in 26, 28 years could be too slow at anything. Well, thank you so much for making time to do this. I'm looking forward to listening to even more of your music and going back into the catalog, and maybe some point in the future when I'm more knowledgeable, we could do this again.
Thank you so much. Well, it was so nice talking to you. You said you didn't know anything about me, but seems like you know me a lot.
Thank you so much, Satoko Fujii. As always, thank you for listening to Spotlight On, a production of 23 Media Ventures. I'm your host and executive producer, Lawrence Purrier. We're produced and edited by Michael Donaldson, with theme music by Q Burn's Abstract Message. If you'd like to support our work, please rate and review us wherever you listen to podcasts, and then visit us online at spotlightonpodcast.com. There you'll find our free episode archive, weekly postings on our official blog, our online store, and a link to make a donation to support our work. Thanks for listening, be safe, and stay in touch.